Good evening, livelings. It's Vivi, and I'm back to talk about the Chronicle a little bit more. It is October 7th, and 10 years ago today is the night before Terry's memorial service. Celebration of life is the term that we used. The last month has been a whirlwind of food being brought to the house, meals, people asking, what do I need? What do we need? Just a constant stream of those who want to do what they can. And the only thing I want is my husband back and my life to be normal. The impossible. We had the celebration of life at Stargazers Theater because Flash Cadillac, the band that Terry sang with, graciously offered to play. That was their way of grieving, I think, and participating. It was so gracious. So we knew it was going to be a party. I had people come in over the last couple of days helping me prepare food and for the cake because I was catering the event. And the last month, I don't remember a lot. In fact, I don't remember very much about October or about September or October or November. I remember waking up and realizing it was Thanksgiving and wondering, it was like the fog lifted finally. Had no idea. I have no idea who came to visit or who. I don't remember details, let's put it that way. But I do remember this week prior to the service and people coming to the house and us making food together. And I do remember finding out that I was right. There was no money in the banks, and I found out other things, like my house was 5 months in arrears and in foreclosure. And just to put it in perspective, Terry had, at one time, our house was free and clear, but when he started investing in real estate in 2006 and 2007, he invested in Florida because Florida at the time was one of the fastest, hottest growing markets. And so he leveraged our house, our condo in Florida, that was also one time free and clear. So he had leveraged all these things, and I had our house payment. Talk about living far beyond your means. Our house payment on the house in Colorado Springs with the 2 mortgages that he had put on was $11,000 a month. Can you imagine? It was astronomical. It just as well have been $1 million a month. I didn't have $11,000 a month, and I had $5,000 in the bank, and that was it. No income. So, yeah, that was the kinds of things that I found out over the month, getting all the financial information and just how dire things were. So I knew all that. And I was planning the celebration of life. All the kids had come back to attend, and a fund had been started so that I could pay for the expenses that were accruing. And that's why we were making food and going to cater it ourselves, because I had helpers, but I didn't have cash. So it was nice to have the house full of people with a goal in mind. It was really nice. And people were generous. They had donated money that ended up being what I lived on for the next 6 months. And I want to make it really clear that as I've pondered this over the last few years, and once my anger subsided and I tried to make sense of it all, Terry was a brilliant businessman. He was an entrepreneur, and he was highly successful. He was a highly successful swimmer. He took risks that had made him incredibly wealthy in his businesses. And what his job was, or what his business was, and this was before radio stations were owned by the conglomerates like Clearwater, is it? Or anyway, the radio conglomerates. Back in the day when radio stations were independently owned, he and his partner would go in to radio stations in a market. They would research what radio station was doing poorly. And with his incredible knowledge of rock and roll and music, and his partners had a research company and was the facts and figures guy with data, they would buy an ailing radio station and they would make it profitable, and then they would sell it for a profit. So instead of flipping houses, they were flipping radio stations. And they were extraordinarily successful at this. And they owned several, and they got bought out by the conglomerates that came in and bought basically all of the radio stations that are owned now by the big corporations. So that's how he made his millions. He was very smart, and he was, as most successful business entrepreneurs have to be, he took risks. So he brought that same gusto, I suppose, to real estate. He retired when he was 54 years old. And so in order to continue doing things other than just being retired, he got into real estate investment. And he saw Florida as a great market to invest in. So great that he put his assets on the line and invested in millions of dollars worth of vacant land, some residential and some condos. And of course, back then, everything was overinflated. And when the crash happened in 2008, Terry was certainly not the only person who lost fortunes in the real estate scams that were going on at the time. And Florida was one of the hottest markets and growing the fastest and appreciating the fastest, but it was also one of the hardest hits when the failure hit. Florida, Arizona, and Nevada were the hardest hit states. And hardest hit meaning that the property values were, you got 30 to 40 cents on the dollar. So when 2008 happened, and instead of just turning everything over to the banks and cutting his losses, he, for the next 2 years, 2.5 years, burned through his cash to hold on to those properties. And with millions of dollars of properties, there were taxes. They were all leveraged. And he thought it was going to turn around really quickly, maybe in a year or two, but as we know, it took a lot longer than that. It took, 2008 to probably 2015. So that's 7, 8 years. I know without a shadow of a doubt that he didn't mean to leave this world with such a disastrous result. And I certainly wasn't the only one affected. He had used his children's inheritance, so they had nothing. He had, like I said, he burned through all of his cash trying to uphold. And he was a very proud man. He didn't want to think that he had failed. And I don't think he ever had actually failed. So he thought he could fix it. And I think that's why he kept telling me, I'm going to get up out of this bed next week and I'm going to take care of everything. I believe that he believed that he was somehow miraculously going to be able to fix everything. Because he knew the position that he was leaving things, but he didn't have the courage to face me enough to say, to warn me. And I understand all that now, but it took a while. It took a while. He really wanted to take care of his family, and he wanted us to be taken care of for the rest of our lives. And so that's why he was trying to take advantage of this incredible opportunity in real estate, but he also lost sight of the big picture, I think, got caught up in it. And by the time he realized that there was no hope, he was far beyond a position to fix it. And I do think that had he lived, we might, and he certainly would have found a way. But he ran out of time. He died. And I do think also that him being sick, they said the amount of cancer that was in his body by the time he got to the doctor, he must have had it at least 2 to 3 years. So I'm sure that was affecting his decision making as well. We never did a brain scan, but I'm pretty sure that there was probably cancer in his brain by the end. That's the pattern of colon cancer. It metastasizes to the liver, to the lungs, and then to the brain. So I don't think he was thinking clearly in the last few months. And I just wanted to say that because he was a really good man. He was a smart man, and I know that he didn't mean to do that to his family. Which makes it even harder. And obviously he trusted me because he made me executor. And he must have believed that I could fix it, or I could get through it, that it'd be okay, that I'd make it okay. And I felt that, and I did. I will do another chronicle tomorrow, the day of his service. And I'm trying to decide if I have it in me to continue with the aftermath. It was significant. It was very, very difficult at times. But I also think that it could be helpful to people out there to know what it takes sometimes to keep going. I'm not sure. I haven't made up my mind. Anyway, have a good evening. I will see you tomorrow with the rest of the story. Good night.